Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Today at 11 o'clock, Unacademy conducted India's biggest scholarship test. If you miss that test, do not worry. 1. We will be discussing all these questions right now. 2. There is going to be another slot for the scholarship test at 5 o'clock. So please attempt that scholarship test if you haven't attempted it yet. Let's discuss all these questions. First, we'll start with polity questions, followed by other subjects. Let's look at question number 25, which is first question for Indian polity. Which of the following features of Indian Constitution have been borrowed from the British Constitution? Parliamentary system, where Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, they are the real power authority, not the king. Rule of law, the concept of A.V. Dicey. Bicameral legislature, where we have two houses, lower house, upper house. Fundamental rights, no, borrowed from the United States. So 1, 2, 3, B is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Question 26. The term state in Article 12. What's Article 12? Part 3 of the Constitution deals with fundamental rights. But one can claim these fundamental rights from the state. But who is that state against whom you can claim your fundamental rights? The definition of that state is provided under Article 12 of the Constitution. And you can claim your fundamental rights from the Government of India and Parliament of India, from government and legislature of each state. It's also a state under Article 12. Local authorities within India, statutory as well as constitutional bodies, they're also state within the meaning of Article 12, from which you can claim your fundamental rights. So C, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements. The fifth schedule applies to the administration of tribal areas in Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura. It is the sixth schedule which applies to Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura. The fifth schedule applies to tribal areas other than these four states. The sixth schedule empowers the governor to declare any area as the scheduled area. No, this power is available with the President of India. So which of these statements are correct? D, neither 1 nor 2 is the right answer. Another question. With reference to directive principles of state policy, consider the following statements. Number 1, the DPSPs can override fundamental rights if enacted through a constitutional amendment. This is where you may have a confusion. But look at the term can. Through constitutional amendments, what we have done, we have given primacy to two directive principles of state policy, 39B and 39C. And they have superiority over Articles 14 and 19. Which primarily means what? That if you enact a law through a constitutional amendment to give shape to directive principles of state policy, to give effect to DPSPs, it can even override fundamental rights. But yes, what Supreme Court has said in Minerva Mills case 1980 is that the harmonious relationship or the balance between DPSPs and fundamental rights is also part of the basic structure. So even through a constitutional amendment, you cannot disturb that balance. But if this term would have been shall, then the statement is wrong. The DPSPs can override fundamental rights if enacted through a constitutional amendment. Can, yes. So this statement it might appear that it is wrong. But if it was shall, then it is plainly wrong. But if it's a half statement, so without disturbing the basic structure, can DPSPs override fundamental rights? Yes. But even without that qualifier, without altering basic structure, even then the statement is correct. The DPSPs can, not shall, override fundamental rights if enacted through constitutional amendment. We have seen that happening, 25th Amendment, so on and so forth. The primary objective of, so this statement is correct, the primary objective of DPSP is to promote the idea of a welfare state and secure social and economic justice. Fundamental rights are for the promotion of political justice. Directive principles are for the promotion of socio-economic democracy. The Constitution explicitly mandates that the state shall give precedence to DPSPs over fundamental rights whenever there is a conflict between the two. No. 1 and 2, C is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements with reference to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. The Speaker decides on the question of disqualification of members under the 10th schedule. Correct? Anti-defection law. Who has the power to disqualify a defector? Speaker. The Speaker continues to hold office even after the dissolution of Lok Sabha until a new Speaker is elected. The Speaker continues to hold office even after the dissolution of Lok Sabha until a new Speaker is elected. This statement is incorrect. Till the first session of the Lok Sabha, the Speaker continues to remain in office. Then the Speaker pro tem presides over the session of Lok Sabha to administer oath to newly elected MPs and then to preside over the election of the new Speaker. So the Speaker continues to hold office even after the dissolution of Lok Sabha. Till here the statement is correct. Until a new Speaker is elected? No. Until the first day of the session of the Lok Sabha, newly elected Lok Sabha. Incorrect. The Speaker must resign from the membership of the political party after being elected to the post. This is not mentioned anywhere. The Speaker continues to hold the office. Although, yes, ideally you should resign, but it is not mandatory. Which of the statements are correct? A, 1 only is the right answer. Let's look at another question. According to the Supreme Court's advisory opinion, which was delivered a couple of days ago, which of the following actions by a governor under Article 200 can be subjected to judicial scrutiny? Long story short, Supreme Court in its advisory opinion said, we cannot fix timelines on the governors, on the president to clear bills. But yes, if a bill is presented to the governor and the speaker's and the governor's action is prolonged, indefinite, in a sense the governor is not acting at all. So prolonged or unexplained delay by the governor in acting on a bill, that is subjected to what the Supreme Court said is limited judicial review. Clear? So C is the right answer. With reference to the money bill, consider the following statements. A money bill can be introduced only in Lok Sabha. Correct? Article 109. Rajya Sabha cannot reject or amend a money bill but may recommend changes. Correct? The decision of the President regarding whether a bill is a money bill or not is a final. The decision of the Speaker, according to the Constitution, is final. So statement 3 is incorrect. Which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2. A is the right answer. Let's look at another question. The right to form associations or unions under Article 19 includes the fundamental right to strike? No, you can form unions, associations, cooperative societies, but you don't have the right to go on a strike. That is provided by the Factories Act. So not under Article 19. The right to form associations protects the existence of unions, but the specific activities of those unions can be regulated by state through law. This is not an absolute fundamental right. In the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, security of the state, public order, this fundamental right can be restricted, can be regulated. Reasonable restrictions can be imposed. So statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. That's the right answer. Another question. Which of the following committees first recommended the inclusion of fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution, on the basis of which 42nd Amendment was enacted in 1976? 10 fundamental duties were added. Part 4, capital A was added. Article 51, capital A was added. Sardar Swaran Singh Committee. B is the right answer. So these were the questions that appeared from Indian Polity in today's Unacademy Civil Services Championship Test, Scholarship Test. Now I will hand over this days to Abhishek sir, and he will discuss the questions asked from history when it comes to the scholarship test.
So we'll be discussing the history questions of the UCSC. Let's look at the questions itself. With reference to Indus Valley civilization, consider the following statements. The city of Lothal had the world's earliest known dockyard. The script of the Harappan civilization has been successfully deciphered. Kalibangan in Rajasthan shows evidence of plowed field. This is correct. Earliest dockyard is in Lothal. Then we have Kalibangan and plowed field. This is also correct. However, the script has not been deciphered till today, and therefore the answer becomes 1 and 3 only, which is second statement is totally incorrect. The idea is very simple, that script, there is a lot of research going on, but it has not been deciphered till this point. Okay. With which of the following Buddhist texts contain the rules for monastic discipline? Jatakas, Dhammapadas, Vinay-Pitak, Abhidhamma-Pitak. Tripitakas, these two automatically go out of one text. Abhidhamma is the philosophy of Buddhism, so it cannot be the answer. Sutta is what Buddha said, and Vinay is the rule book. The split between Theravada and Mahasangika happened over the Vinay-Pitak only, that there needs to be a dilution of the rule book itself. Then, the term megalith refers to a type of early coin made of copper, a large stone used to mark burial sites, a kind of pottery found in Harappan sites, an ancient fortified settlement. Here the answer, mega means big, lithic means stone, large stone. Megalithics are known for elaborate burial rituals, and this is one of a very interesting straightforward question, but checks your understanding of terminology. Okay. With reference to Mauryan administration, consider the following statements. The Arthashastra provides details about Mauryan administration. Megasthenes Indica gives the outsider's account of Chandragupta Maurya's reign. The empire was divided into provinces governed by princes and kumaras. Here the answer is very straightforward, which is all the statements here are correct. Arthashastra provided details of administration. Yes. Megasthenes gave account of Chandragupta Maurya. Outsider, Greek. Yes. And empire was divided into provinces. Kumaras, Aryaputra used to manage it. Totally correct. Terminology based, good mix of statement based questions. Then, with reference to Quit India movement, consider the following statements. The Quit India resolution was passed at Bombay session of AICC. The British immediately arrested major Congress leaders, including Mahatma Gandhi, leading to the leaderless movement case. Now, this seems to be incorrect, but it is correct. The Gwalior Tank resolution was the meeting of the AICC in Bombay on 8th August. This is totally correct statement. And on 9th August, everybody got arrested by Lilithgow as a preemptive attempt. Therefore, both statement 1 and 2 are correct. This seems to be incorrect, but it's actually technically correct. That rather than writing Gwalior Tank, they just wrote the concept of AICC Bombay session. It is not a simple statement to understand. This is out of the whole set, only one tricky question with one statement in an interesting set. Then, consider following statements. The Home Rule movement wanted self-government for India, but still within the British Empire. The idea of Home Rule was inspired by movement for self-government in other parts of the world, especially Ireland. Here, we have to ascertain if both the statements are correct. If not, then we go into this area. If both are correct, does the second one explain the first in that sense? So, is the first statement correct? Yes. The concept of Swaraj within the Home Rule League movement was with regards to the idea of Swaraj within the concept of dominion or the concept of British Empire within the Commonwealth. And yes, it was inspired by the Home Rule League movement in Irish sector or the Irish Home Rule League movement. Now, does the second statement explain the first one? If then the answer becomes A. Yes, in a way, because the Irish Home Rule League movement had the same type of nature which was absorbed by the Home Rule League movement in India. Therefore, both 1 and 2 are correct, and the second is the first explanation, or the second statement explains the first one. Interesting, straightforward, nothing out of the box, but you have to establish this causation and relationship in the larger scheme of things. Then, consider the following statements regarding the civil disobedience movement. It began with the violation of the salt law by Mahatma Gandhi. The movement included refusal to pay taxes, defiance of forest laws. The Gandhi impact brought the civil disobedience movement to an end. This is correct. The Dandi March called Satyagraha. This is also correct. This was part of the civil disobedience campaign. But this is incorrect. Gandhi, in fact, just paused the civil disobedience movement, did not end it. The end is in 1934. Gandhi will go for the first phase, then Gandhi impact. Then he will come back from Gandhi impact after the minority, you can say, minority pact had in a way defied what Gandhi wanted. There was a deadlock. He will come back. 1932 to 34 will be second phase. Lot of repression by Wellington, which will in turn lead to the end in 34. So here we have only first and second correct. Third statement is incorrect. Then, with reference to permanent settlement introduced under Lord Cornwallis, consider the following statements. Land revenue was permanently fixed and could not be increased despite increase in agricultural productivity. The system encouraged absentee landlordism as zamindar rights became transferable through sale. Important point. It reduced intermediaries by making zamindars responsible for revenue collection. Here you need to understand one thing. First is totally correct. 10/11 has to go to the British. It will go to the British irrespective of agricultural productivity. If this is correct, which is absentee land, which is also true, absentee landlordism that the landlords are sitting in Calcutta, they have asked an intermediary to collect it from the countryside. If this is true, this has to be true. Or this has to be false. So if this is true, this has to be false in that regard because these two are interconnected. So encourage absentee landlordism, then it cannot reduce intermediaries, it will increase intermediaries because other people are collecting rather than the zamindar himself. So here only two statements are correct, 1 and 2. Third is incorrect. If third has to be correct, second would have to be incorrect. If second is correct, then third has to be incorrect. So the questions of history were straightforward. Now we will be discussing the economy questions with Shyam sir. But do understand that the questions were straightforward and I hope that you were able to get at least 7 out of 8, if not 8 out of 8. But all 8 out of 8 are easy and can be done. See you. Thank you. Handing over to Shyam sir.
Hello and welcome. Let's look at the questions from the subject of Indian economy as well as the schemes which were asked in the Unacademy UCSC. Question number 17. The Stand Up India scheme is meant to. There are 4 options. Now listen to me very carefully. The government of India back in the year 2016 announced 2 very important schemes. One is Startup India scheme and the second one is Stand Up India scheme. In the context of startup, obviously the government of India aims to promote the startups, right, has implemented this particular scheme. And in the context of startup, the government of India targeted the entrepreneurs belonging to SC, ST and women entrepreneurs. These particular entrepreneurs who wanted to invest in green projects or greenfield projects. Right? What is the idea for greenfield projects? Where the investments are done in new projects. The projects are started from the scratch. These are called as greenfield projects. So basically the government of India under the Stand Up India initiative targeted these SC, ST entrepreneurs as well as women entrepreneurs and provided certain credit facilities to promote their investments. Now look at the option. Support startups in rural India. It's not associated with that. Promote entrepreneurship amongst SC, ST and women entrepreneurs. Yes. So question number 17, right option is option B. Question number 18. Which of the following are examples of non-debt creating capital receipts in the union budget? You can solve this particular question using elimination. I'll come to that. But before that, what is the basic idea for non-debt creating capital receipts? Point number 1, capital receipts. Essentially the meaning is the earnings of government of India. Earnings of government of India, which are associated with the assets or liabilities. Which are associated with assets or liabilities. When I say associated with, the assets and liabilities will change and as a result of this, the government will earn the money. These are called as capital receipts. For example, the government will sell a company owned by it. So when the government will sell, government will earn money. This is part of capital receipt. The government will borrow from the market. So the government will issue a bond, borrow from the market. That is also part of receipt. That is the earnings in this particular year. But please understand, the question is not simply on capital receipt. Question is on non-debt creating capital receipts. Non-debt creating capital receipts simply mean what are the forms of the money that the government of India has earned this year associated with capital side of the budget. But these should not be creating any kind of a liability. These should not be creating any kind of a debt. That is non-debt creating capital receipts. Now, look at the first one, borrowings. Borrowings by nature will create a debt. So first one is incorrect. Now, whatever could be the borrowings, they will create a liability, they will create a debt, hence wrong. Now, if you know that first one is wrong, you can use the elimination method and get the correct answer. But anyways, recovery of loans from the state governments and public enterprises. So the government of India has given loan in the past, it is recollecting the loan. So the assets of the government of India will go down. Yes. Proceeds from the disinvestment, that is the selling of the companies owned by the government, assets will go down, government will get money. Yes. Market borrowings through government securities. Borrowing means it is not, right? It is not a non-debt creating receipt. So second and third is correct. Right option for the question number 18 will be option B. Question number 19. Twin deficit in an economy refers to which of the following? What is the basic idea for twin deficit? Essentially, it is talking about two types of deficits. One is the fiscal deficit and the second one is the current account deficit, CAD, fiscal deficit and current account deficit. Now, there are different theories as to why both of the deficits will move in the same direction. For example, let's say in fiscal deficit, the government will borrow more. When the government will borrow more, interest rates in India will increase. And when interest rates will increase, it will have an impact on the exchange rate. And as a result of that, the current account deficit will also widen. This is one theory. Another theory also says, when the government of India will borrow more and spend money, the demand for the goods and services in India will increase. When the demand will increase, imports will increase, that will further widen the current account deficit. So there are different ways to explain why both of them will move in the same direction. When both these deficit increase, this is called as a twin deficit. So the right option for this particular question is a fiscal deficit and revenue deficit. No. Fiscal deficit and current account deficit. Right option is option D. Question number 20 now. Consider the following financial instruments. Debentures, commercial bills, equity shares and treasury bills. How many of the above are classified as money market instruments? Money market instruments. Now listen to me very carefully. The financial market is divided into two parts. Right, one is called as the capital market and the second one is called as money market. What is essentially the difference between capital market and the money market? In capital market, the funds that will be raised by the company or the funds that will be collected by the issuers of these instruments, the money is for longer or medium duration. That is used for creation of assets, related to assets. For example, I will issue a bond, borrow money for 10 years and use the bond to purchase a machine. That is basically a longer duration. Whereas in case of the money market, the money is raised by issuing certain instruments which have a shorter maturity period. Shorter maturity period essentially means up to 1 year. Up to 1 year. That is essentially. So if you look at the options which have been provided, debentures are debt instruments. They will have a maturity period of it is not a money market instrument. Commercial bills. These are the types of instruments which are issued in the money market. Essentially, whenever there is a trade between a buyer and a seller, and these are short term in nature. Yes. Equity shares, there is no maturity period of equity shares, hence, right, basically, it's not a money market. Treasury bills are the government's instruments which the government issues. So timing borrow for up to 1 year. 30th of November. The instrument will have a maturity period of 91 days, 182 days, 364 days, etc. So fourth one, yes, it's a money market instrument. Second and four are correct. Right option B. Question number 20 will probably be option B. Next, question number 21. Consider the following statement. In India, outright open market operations are permanent. During outright open market operations, when the central bank buys a G security, it is without any promise to sell them later, unlike in the repo rate. During outright OMO, when the central bank sells G securities, it is without any promise to buy them later, unlike reverse repo rate. What is the basic idea? Open market operations means what? The Reserve Bank of India will buy the government securities or sell the government securities. That is called as open market operations. Now, in case of open market operations, there are two types. One is called as outright open market operations.
Hello.
And the second one, the repo type of open market operations. What is essentially the difference here? In case of outright open market operation, RBI will either only, I repeat, only sell the government securities or only buy the government securities. That's it. Only sell over transaction. Or another transaction, only, right, let's say, buy the government securities. Whereas in case of repo, what does the RBI do? Right, RBI basically, whether it is repo or reverse repo, essentially what is done? The government securities, for example, in repo, here is RBI, here is a bank. Bank will take the money from RBI and sell government securities today. But with the promise, that is, in the transaction, there is an agreement. The RBI will return the government securities or sell the government securities back to the bank after certain time period, after a specific number of days at a specific price.
Hello.
This is essentially the concept of repo and reverse repo. In reverse repo, exactly opposite to whatever I explained, under repo will take place. So, in case of outright, only one side transaction, RBI will either sell or either buy. Whereas in case of repo and reverse repo, in case of repo, RBI will buy and later sell. And reverse repo, exactly opposite. So, there is a contract, there is an agreement. In the first step, the government securities will be sold, and in the second step, they will be bought back. That is basically the repo and reverse repo transaction. Now, look at the statement. In India, the outright open market operations are permanent. Permanent in the sense, only one-sided transaction will take place. Money will either change, the government securities will be either bought or sold. Money supply will change. That's a permanent nature. Yes. During the outright OMO, when the central bank buys government securities, it is without any promise. Yes. During outright OMO, when the central bank sells government securities, it is without any promise. Yes. All the three statements are correct. Option A, both statement 2 and 3 are correct, and both of them explain the statement 1. Because we are using the statement 1 and we are saying the change in the money supply is permanent, and this is the reason why the change is permanent. Right option for question number 21 is option A. Question number 22. How many of the following are examples of white goods? That's a basic idea of white goods. The electronic goods that we are using in our houses, these are generally referred to as white goods, right? Or else they will also use the term grey goods. For example, the laptops, etc., these are called as grey goods. Or else there is also one more term, some of the goods are referred to as brown goods. Best example, TV. But what is the idea for white goods? The electronic items that we use, which are generally colored white, these are called as white goods. Right? For example, air conditioner, is it white in color generally? Yes. Dishwasher, yes. Fridge, yes. All the three generally, again I am saying traditionally, don't compare it to today. Today you can get different colors, but traditionally these used to be covered with white enamel. That's the reason these are called as white goods. All the three are white goods. Right option for the question number 22 will be option C. Question number 23. High taxes on sin goods are an example of which type of taxation policy? Regressive, progressive, pigwin, and proportional taxation. Now, whenever you have seen certain people consuming certain sin goods, what is a sin good? I'll start with an example. Tobacco products, these are called as sin goods. Cigarettes for that matter. Sin goods are generally those kind of goods or those set of goods which are not preferred for consumption. The society generally shuns the consumption. The cultural, right, let's say practices argue against the consumption of these kind of goods. These are called as generally sin goods. Now, why there is a high taxes on sin goods? The argument is given under the concept of option C, pigwin taxation, which is a right option by the way. Whenever a person consumes a sin good, for example, let's say a cigarette. When a person will smoke a cigarette, the smoke or the right? Let's say the exhaling of the smoke that is done by the person, or the smoke of it is inhaled by somebody else. So there is a concept of externality here. Somebody is using it, but the impact of it is felt by somebody who is not using, who is a non-user. This is called as a externality. In order to ensure there is a externality, the cost of externality which is added into the cost of the market price, the government imposes a higher tax on the same good, and that is the basic idea of a Pigouvian taxation. So question number 23, the right option is option C. Question number 24, consider the following statements. Statement 1, when the rupee depreciates against the US dollar, India's imports become costlier. What is the basic idea? Let's assume right now $1 is equal to 80 rupees and rupee depreciates, $1 is equal to, let's say, 85 rupees, hypothetically. Essentially, this will mean that whatever I was importing by paying $1, for which I paid 80, now I'll have to pay 85 rupees. So the imports have become costlier. Yes, the statement 1 is true. When the rupee depreciates, India's exporters usually earn lower profits. This is incorrect. Reason being, whenever rupee depreciates, please remember, whenever rupee depreciates, India's exports become more competitive in the external market. The exports become more and more competitive. Why? I want to sell it at 80 rupees. I want to export it at 80 rupees. Now it is $1 is equal to 80. When the rupee depreciates to $1 is equal to 85, I will not price it at $1 because I want to earn 80 rupees including profit. I will reduce the cost to below $1. So my export competitiveness in fact increases, doesn't decrease. Second is incorrect. First one is correct. Right option is statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Right option is option C. So these were the different questions which were asked in the subject of Indian economy and the schemes in the Unacademy UCSC. If you are yet to take up this particular test, do not panic. There is one more slot at 5 p.m. Please do attend the test at 5 p.m. I'll hand over the discussion to Mukesh sir, who will take up the questions from the subject of geography and discuss.
Now we shall be discussing the questions associated with geography, environment ecology and science and tech ever so briefly. So starting with the subject of geography and the first question associated with the subject of geography. So with reference to the Pacific Ring of Fire, consider the following statements. It is an area of frequent volcanic eruptions and earthquakes surrounding the Pacific Ocean. So we know that the Pacific Ring of Fire in its entirety is a zone of convergence and transform plate boundaries. It is the boundary of the region of the Pacific Ocean extending from the region of South America, western coast of South America, western coast of North America, the region of eastern part of Asia, the island regions of Indonesia, Philippines, and then even into the region around Tonga Islands to the east of New Zealand. So that is the entire zone of Pacific Ring of Fire dominated by earthquakes as well as volcanic activities due to convergence, subduction of the Pacific Sea flow, as well as some other plates like Juan de Fuca plate, Nazca plate, Philippine Sea plate, and so on. So it is an area of frequent volcanic eruptions and earthquakes surrounding the Pacific Ocean. That is a correct statement. It coincides with the location of major tectonic plate boundaries. That is why you have the entire region as the Pacific Ring of Fire. This is also correct. It includes the eastern coast of Africa. That is around the region of Somalia, the region around the Horn of Africa, all the way extending up till around Madagascar and South Africa. So that region in the western part of Indian Ocean, that is not a part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. So we have to find out which of the statements is or are correct. So the correct statements are B, that is 1 and 2 only. Then after that, the next question. With reference to the Indo-Gangetic plains, consider the following statements. The plains were formed by the depositional work of Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra river systems. So the answer is correct, yes, because the Indo-Gangetic plains were in fact a kind of a four deep, a depression. Immediately to the south of the Himalayas, you basically had a four deep, and the rivers originating from the Himalayas deposited the sediments up till a depth of almost around 2 to 3 kilometers in certain areas.
So the major river systems carrying out these deposits have been the Indus, Ganga and the Brahmaputra river system. So that is correct. Region is an example of an aggradational plain. Aggradation means deposition. Degradation means erosion, right? So this is correct. The entire Indo-Gangetic plain has uniform fertility and topography. This is incorrect, because if you take a look at the Indo-Gangetic plain, you have various different tracts such as the Bhabar tract, which is rocky, where agricultural productivity or cultivation cannot be carried out. Then you have the case of Tarai, which is fertile, which is marshy. Then you have Khadar and Bhangar. Khadar is fertile, Bhangar is not so fertile. Coarse-grained structure is what you find in Bhangar. So overall, it does not have a kind of a uniform topography and uniform fertility. So in this also, the correct answer is going to be 1 and 2 only. That is option A. Then the next question. This is a question regarding the river system, an easy question for that matter. With reference to Godavari river system, consider the following statements. Now, river Godavari, which is the longest river of peninsular plateau, is also referred to as Dakshin Ganga. Overall, the length spanning close to around 1450 kilometers, river Godavari originates from the laps of the Western Ghats in the region of Trembakeshwar near the Nashik district. Now, from there, the river originates and drains to the eastern direction, joined by various tributaries, like you have the case of Manjra, Pranhita, Vardha, Indravati. All these rivers, they join with Godavari, and Godavari drains into the region of Bay of Bengal. So it originates from Western Ghats near Nashik in Maharashtra. That is correct. It is the longest river in peninsular India. That is why it is known as the Dakshin Ganga. It is correct. Manjra and Indravati are its tributaries. This is also correct. Manjra, an important right bank tributary, whereas Indravati is a left bank tributary in that particular case. So here C, that is 1, 2 and 3, all of them are correct. Then moving on to the next question. In the context of southwest monsoon onset over India, consider the following processes. The formation of low-level cross-equatorial jet is primarily controlled by the pressure gradient between Mascarene High and the heated Indian supercontinent. So this is basically a subcontinent. That is basically referring to the tropical easterly jet. The tropical easterly jet, which tends to originate from the Tibetan highlands. Now, that tropical easterly jet, why does it originate? Because during the summer months, the Tibetan highlands, they gain heat and they develop a substantial low pressure, due to which the air rises up. It hits the tropopause and then it diverges. The southward extension of this follows the Kolkata-Hyderabad axis, and then from the region of Horn of Africa and slightly to the south of it, it enters into the southern hemisphere and sinks into the region of Mascarene High, thereby strengthening the southwest monsoon winds. So it is the upper air movement which is aided by the pressure difference in the region of Mascarene High and the Tibetan highlands. So the first statement is correct. The upper tropospheric tropical easterly jet establishes only after significant heating of the Tibetan highlands. This is correct, because only then a substantial low pressure is developed over the Tibetan highlands, which leads to the rise of air and then its divergence in the region of tropopause. The northward displacement of the ITCZ is triggered mainly by the summer solstice and is independent of sea surface temperature anomalies in the Indian Ocean. This is incorrect. The northward transition of the ITCZ is not only dependent upon the summer solstice. It is dependent on the land surface temperature. It is dependent on the Indian Ocean dipole, the temperature that is observed in Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea. It is because of these reasons that it is not the case that every time ITCZ reaches the northern part of India at the same date. It tends to vary. So that variation is caused because of the sea surface anomalies in terms of temperature factor. So here again, you have B, that is only 2. So 2 of these processes, they play a role in influencing the monsoons. Now, Baba Budan Hills, famous for coffee cultivation, are located in which Indian state? It is Karnataka, in the district of Chikmagalur, which is also referred to as the coffee capital of southern India. Now, it is there that you have the Baba Budan Hills, and in the entire vicinity of that region, in fact, coffee is cultivated in large quantums because the amount of rainfall is ideal, around 150 centimeter. You have a thick foliage of vegetation which allows you for the growing of coffee beans in shade, which is what they require. Then, consider the following statements about the Chotanagpur Plateau. Chotanagpur Plateau, one of the oldest regions in the entirety of India. So, which is the area of the Chotanagpur Plateau? The southern part of Jharkhand, some parts of western part of West Bengal, some parts of Chhattisgarh and some parts of Odisha. So, that is the entire extent of the Chotanagpur Plateau. It is composed mainly of Archean granite and gneiss rocks. That is true. It is very, very old. So, that is why composed mainly of Archean granite and gneiss rocks. Plateau is known as the storehouse of India's mineral wealth, very rich in metallic minerals, for example, and even in terms of the energy minerals like coal. And then you have the metallic minerals like iron, you have bauxite, you basically have some amount of copper deposits, you have the case of manganese deposits. All of them are to be found in the region of Chotanagpur Plateau. So, this is correct. Damodar River flows mainly through its southern part. Southern part of Chotanagpur Plateau lies in the extent of northern Odisha. Damodar River, which is an important river in the state of Jharkhand, drains through a rift valley, and that rift valley is something that you find in the region of northern part of Chotanagpur Plateau. So, this is incorrect. So, here again the correct answer is going to be A, that is 1 and 2 only. Then after that, consider the following statements. Now, the intertropical convergence zone shifts north and south of the equator with changing seasons. This is correct. You have the northward transition during the northern summers and the southward transition of the ITCZ during the southern summers. The first statement is correct. The seasonal shift of the ITCZ occurs mainly due to differential heating of land and water at different latitudes. This is also correct because water tends to heat up much slower as compared to the land areas. So, there is a thermal difference, and that is where the ITCZ indicates a kind of a shift, because mind you, ITCZ is the thermal low, thermal equator, indicating the extreme form of low pressure due to heating. So, here the correct answer is going to be A. That is, both the statements 1 and 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Then moving on to the next question. Consider the following pairs regarding major rivers and latitudinal lines they cross twice. Congo River draining through Africa, now eventually draining into the western portion of Africa. Now it crosses the equator twice. So it basically moves through the region around DRC, and it ends up having a curvy path initially, and that is where it crosses the equator twice. Then you have the Limpopo River. The Limpopo River is present in southern part of Africa, originating from the region around South Africa and Botswana, and then ending into the Indian Ocean. It is an eastward flowing river. So amongst the eastward flowing rivers in Africa, you have Zambezi, and then you have Limpopo. So Limpopo crosses the Tropic of Capricorn twice. This is also correct. Mahi River, that is the river in India, crosses the Tropic of Cancer twice. This is correct. This is the only river in India which crosses the Tropic of Cancer twice. It is a westward flowing river which eventually drains into the region around Arabian Sea. So how many of the above pairs are correctly matched? The answer is 3, all of them. So that is basically the question associated with geography. Now we take a look at the questions associated with environment. You had 3 questions associated with environment. First one associated with cloud seeding, which was in news. So cloud seeding is a weather modification technique that aims to enhance rainfall by dispersing substances like silver iodide or dry ice into clouds. This is correct. Because in cloud seeding, what tends to happen? You basically spray these materials, you allow for faster and accelerated condensation so that the density of the cloud increases, so that the chances of rainfall also tends to increase. So the first statement is correct. It can be used when rain-bearing clouds are absent, as the process itself creates clouds through condensation. This is incorrect. This is in fact the reason why Delhi did not experience rainfall despite cloud seeding experiments in the month of October 2025. That is because See, just the spraying of materials cannot build the clouds. You need to have the existence of water vapor, existence of some clouds beforehand for this to materialize. So this is incorrect. During the post-monsoon season, the atmosphere over North India is generally dry and stable, making cloud seeding less effective. So this is based on current affairs, based on the cloud seeding experiment in Delhi. Why it failed? Because you have very dry air in North India during these months, and that means cloud seeding will never succeed. Okay, particularly in these months, unless and until you have moisture brought in by western disturbances. Which of the following factors contribute to coral bleaching? What is coral bleaching, by the way? So corals, they have a perfect symbiotic relationship with the zooxanthellae, which is an algae. The zooxanthellae manufactures food and corals provide them with shelter and also nutrients. So when you have adverse conditions in the surrounding, for example, increased temperature or any of the factors, change in pH value, any of the factors, now the zooxanthellae, their productivity declines and eventually they die and leave the corals. As a consequence, you have the stony white exoskeleton of the corals which are left behind. That entire event is known as coral bleaching. So when we talk about coral bleaching, any adverse conditions, any change in conditions from the normal situation can lead to coral bleaching. So increased sea surface temperature can lead to coral bleaching. Ocean acidification can lead to coral bleaching. Pollution from agricultural runoff, enhanced ultraviolet radiation, all of them will eventually disturb the aquatic or the marine environment. So all of them can lead to coral bleaching. Then, with reference to carbon markets, consider the following statements. Carbon markets allow the trading of carbon credits where one credit represents 1 ton of reduced, avoided or sequestered carbon dioxide or equivalent greenhouse gas emissions. This is correct. The main objective of carbon markets is to provide financial incentive for emission reduction and carbon sequestration. Carbon market, which is a part of the entire aspect of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, was basically institutionalized as a consequence of the Kyoto Protocol. So that is about the trading of emissions so that everybody can meet their targets. Only governments are allowed to buy or sell carbon credits under international carbon market. This is incorrect. Even corporations can use that. So the answer is A, 1 and 2. That basically brings us to the end of the questions associated with environment. And now we come to the questions associated with science and tech. With reference to India-US Joint Space Mission NISAR, consider the following statements. The mission uses dual-band radar equipped by both India and the US to map Earth's surface changes with a precision of up to 1 centimeter. This is correct. Now, NISAR is one of those missions which had been delayed quite substantially owing to separate development of the S-band modules, and you had the other modules being developed both in US as well as in India. This is for the ground level observation which can be carried out every 12 days. And this can be used in order to understand changing in the vegetation pattern, changing, let's suppose, glacial melt, any change in topography, up to a resolution of 1 centimeter. The first statement is correct. It is aimed only to monitor glacial melt and has no relevance for seismic or groundwater change detection. This is incorrect. Even seismic changes, any slightest change in the topography can be easily measured by this particular radar, right? Then, the satellite will cover nearly all terrestrial surfaces every 30 days in a near polar orbit. Incorrect. Every 12 days. Okay. So the correct answer in this is A. That is 1 only. Then, the next question. With reference to recent advances in nanotechnology, consider the following statements. Nanoenzymes are synthetic nanomaterials that can mimic enzyme activity and are being explored for use in diagnostic biosensors. This is a correct statement. In nano-drug delivery systems, gold nanoparticles can cross the blood-brain barrier without the need for any surface functionalization. This is incorrect. You need to provide a higher level functionalization. Only then it can cross the blood-brain barrier that is being explored in order to aid and cure multiple diseases. So this is incorrect. So the correct answer in this is A, that is 1 only. Then with reference to biotechnology, consider the following statements. Bt crops carry Bacillus thuringiensis genes that allow the plant to produce insect-specific toxic proteins. This is correct in order to fight the pink bollworm. That is why you had the case of Bt crops, particularly Bt cotton, Bt brinjal, etc. Then plasmids used in recombinant DNA technology often contain selectable marker genes which allow identification of successfully transformed host cells. This is correct. All viral vectors used in gene therapy integrate their genetic material into host genome, ensuring long-term expression of the introduced gene. This is incorrect. Absolute statement. It is not the case that all viral vectors can actually do that. So here, 2 of them are correct. So the correct answer in this case is going to be B, that is only 2. So that brings us to the end of the discussion for geography, environment and science and tech. Overall, I hope that you have appeared for this test and you have gained valuable experience for your prelims examination. Thank you.